Going to call the Administration and Public Works Committee to order. First item on our agenda is approval of the minutes of our meeting of December 9. May I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Any changes or comments? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, let's see this. We have no one signed up on our citizen comment list. Nobody signed up. Anybody want to speak on any of the items on our agenda? Seeing none, we'll move right along. We're going to go through our consent agenda. Let me read through the payroll and bills. Does anybody have any comment on any of the bills? We'll just move right along, okay? We're being asked to recommend to the council the approval of the City of Evanston payroll for the period of November 25, 2019 through December 8 in the amount of $2,768,934.45, and December 9 through December 22, 2019 in the amount of $2,691,908.26. The bills list for January 14, 2020, 2020, FY 2019 in the amount of $10,438,725.41, and the bills list for January 14, 2020 in the amount of $505,582.22, and credit card activity for the period ending November 26, 2019 in the amount of $149,842.68. I move approval.
Second.
All right. This is all on the consent agenda, so we'll wait till the end to take a total vote, for those of you wondering why we're not doing that. All right, next item, I'm going to go to Alderman Braithwaite, not the credit cards, post-bond issuance report. A3, I'm sorry.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, I'd like to move item A3, 2019 post-bond issuance report. Staff recommends City Council review and place the 2019 post-bond assurance report on file.
Okay. Does anybody want to comment on that? No.
Nope.
That's just to make sure that they're still all tax exempt, I believe. All right. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? I guess we don't have to, we're going to just introduce and, move approval and then vote at the end, right? I just can't get used to this.
Yep.
All right, next item, Alderman Fleming.
A4. A4 is the approval of contract with GovHR to perform executive search for city manager. It says the majority of members of the council participated in the consultant interviews, recommend City Council authorize the city manager to enter into a contract with GovHR to perform executive search for Evanston's next city manager. Funding comes from the Human Resources Recruitment Fund with a budget of $35,000. This is for action.
Okay. A5, Alderman Suffredin.
I have my light on Alderman Rainey for this one,
Okay.
for A4. Is Miss Lynn here? She is not. You're here to speak. Okay, well, so I had some words from Miss Lynn. So I will just say two things. I'm not sure if it was, let me back up. So I have some frustration. We're coming off of 2 months of some HR issues at the city, some city residents were very upset about. So I come to read this memo, which I'm not sure if it was over arrogance or incompetence, but it is totally wrong. So I participated in the interview. There were 4 of us. So the memo I just read says the majority. If you look into the, full memo in the packet, it says sorry, I have it underlined here because I'm so frustrated. Somewhere in here it says everybody agreed. My issue is, granted, I don't agree, there were 4 people, probably the majority did, but Ms. Lynn never asked me my opinion. So she wrote this memo saying that in one place everybody agreed, the other place the majority. I guess she made an assumption I didn't agree because I didn't, vote for GovHR the first time, but I did take the time to come to the interview, sit through all 3, fill out the questionnaire, participate, and then really to be offended that she didn't even ask me my opinion before she wrote up the memo, and then said that everybody agreed. So I'm not sure if she felt like she didn't need to ask me, that the Ninth Ward residents don't matter. I'm not really sure, but it's quite frustrating to see something written so confidently that's so wrong. So I realize she's not here, but those are my frustrations in reading this memo. And obviously we expect staff to write accurate memos so we can make the decisions. And granted, my decision is based on, sitting through those interviews. It would have been nice if she respected my opinion enough to ask me what I thought, so that could be reflected in the memo.
Alderman Suffredin?
Sure. I just have a process question. Why is this back here? This committee already voted no on GovHR.
No,
Well, the committee did not move it forward, but also it was understood that we were to go through the interview process.
Understood by who?
When the committee met the last time, the question was, you did not actually interview the other candidates to get to GovHR, and you asked for us to go through the interview process, and that's
Who, you is who?
You being the committee.
Okay.
So the committee discussion at the last meeting was we were not going to move forward with this particular vendor until an interview process had occurred, which did occur.
with
What-
the top 3 candidates.
My question is, why is staff pushing GovHR so hard?
No, this is actually at the recommendation of those who participated in the interview. It was those who were there and
Who?
present.
Name names.
So again, who were in the interview was going to be Alderman Fleming.
She
Alderman
wasn't
Rainey.
asked. She just said she was not asked.
Well, let me complete my answer, sir. Alderman Fleming, Alderman Rainey, Alderman Fisk, Alderman Nguyen, and Alderman, that's it, because you were not present. You had said you were going to attend, and Alderman Brayford was not present. So those who stayed until the end were present. It was the recommendation to move forward with that individual vendor. It's up to the council to make the decision of who to select. At the end of the day, you all have the decision of who to select, but that was the selected vendor from that interview process that was to be moved forward.
I want to speak. I was in the room every second of those 3 interviews. There is no one who could have listened to those 3 interviews who could have chosen any other organization other than this one. The other 2 were totally, I was shocked. They were totally, to think that they are in the top tier of government headhunters, so to speak. It was appalling at their ineptness to answer our questions, or their lack of interest in this job almost. It was just almost embarrassing. It was embarrassing in one case, and in the other case, it was just so casual and more or less not really interested in this job, I don't think, although they certainly did submit their proposal. But GovHR was head and shoulders, to the nth degree, more competent than any of the others. And if we had had blindfolds on and not been able to see who we were talking to, it would have been the same way. There was no contest, absolutely no contest. So I'm not sure why some people have a bone to pick against this organization, but we would not have been doing our duty, and we would have shirked our responsibility if we had not chosen this firm. And that's all I'm going to say. And anybody who was in that room, including Alderman Fleming, who didn't think that they were by far the number 1 choice, either wasn't listening or knows something that the rest of us in the room didn't know. So, I mean, I'm not saying there's not a firm out there that we didn't talk to who isn't better, but of the three we interviewed, and I know the other two are considered the tops in their field, this one far outshone the others.
So I was there, I listened, I filled out the forms. We decided afterwards not to debrief because it ran pretty late. I took my forms home, I wrote up my thoughts. I never got a phone call. I still don't choose GovHR. There was many reasons I didn't choose them the first time in this committee, which I think the three of us on this committee didn't choose them. I think we gave our reasoning. You know, she's a nice enough person. I don't think that their firm is, horrible. I did not choose them for this job. So we can vote. I will vote them down like I did last time, but my comments that I wanted to direct to, Director Lynn was that it is an inaccurate memo that didn't reflect everyone's thoughts, and that if we participate in things, people should be asked their opinion if they spend the time to participate.
Understood.
I agree with what you're saying.
Understood.
I agree with what you're saying, but that's different than what I'm saying.
No, well, she's not
Alderman
here, so I have to.
Yeah.
No, I understand what you're saying.
Alderman Simmons?
Oh, so I didn't support it because of the makeup of the organization and that we didn't have a process. We've since had a process. When I got the invitation to participate, I replied, as long as we have a person of color and a woman on this small committee, I would, trust my colleagues to make the best decision for our city. And it seems as though we went through that process and we have a majority that were in support of GovHR. From what I've seen, we've had good candidates come from their work in the past. So I will be supporting it moving forward.
Okay, so, pardon me? Oh, it's going to come off the consent agenda, of course. It should have been taken off before we introduced it. All right, so there's been a motion to introduce, but I'm going to take it off the consent agenda. We'll take it off and let the rest of the council deal with it. All right, so let's move on to A5. Tom, is that, Alderman Sufferman, are you A5?
Sure. I move item A5, which is approval of insurance renewals for property, excess liability, and excess workers' compensation for fiscal year 2020. Staff recommends City Council approval of the premium cost for excess insurance coverage up to $20 million in the amount of $270,546. Funding will be provided from the insurance fund in the amount of $525,000 and workers' compensation in the amount of $161,000. This is for action.
All right. I'll second it, but I need some help with this. Who can help me with this? I couldn't come up with that number. Hi, Hitesh. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Good evening, Chair, members of the committee. So this is we originally came to the City Council on December 9th, and at that time we did not have the final premium numbers for the excess coverage. Because of the tightened the insurance market, particularly so many underwriters not ready to underwrite the municipal clients in the Cook County. We had a tough time, and I think a few days before the 31st, we got the final quote. So this is the additional amount for the excess insurance coverage of up to $20 million, which we had last year.
All right, but that number, or a combination totaling that number, not on any of these sheets in here, right?
Which number are you talking?
The number 200 and the 270,546.
Right, so this is how it works. So if you see the current memo and the table, the total cost comes out to $783,636 for the Gallagher Group, which is the general liability.
Yeah.
If you take away what we presented the last time on December 9th in the memo for the same type of liability, which is the casualty or the liability side, was $480,590. So the difference is $303,046. At that time, we had included $32,500 for the brokerage services, which has already been approved by the council like a few months back when the contract was up for that. So the net difference is 200, and so if we take 32,500 out of that $303,046, the difference is 275. And I can send you the email that.
No, okay, I kept trying to come up with the number,
Right.
but I didn't realize the broker fee was the.
But yeah, in general, yes, the one thing is that we are experiencing, and most of our municipal clients too, higher premiums in this. And we had some large claims, so they look at the last 3 to 5 years claim history.
But also, it seems interesting that we also are burdened simply by losses in all of Cook County, right? I mean, Cook County as a
You're
whole.
right, yeah. I mean, you being in a Cook County, yes, that, yeah. So
Yeah.
some of them, yeah, I mean, I don't know whether but we looked at when they've submitted their responses, we saw almost 10 companies who said, no, we don't want to underwrite.
Yeah, yeah. Well, phooey on them. All right, so thank you very much. Okay, I get it now. All right. So, all right, so that was moved. Did somebody second that? Did they? Second it, all right. All right, so moving right along, Alderman Simmons, A6.
A6, approval of fiscal year 2020 solid waste agency of Northern Cook County disposal fees. Staff recommends that City Council authorize the city manager to execute an extension of the intergovernmental agreement for 2020 refuse disposal fees to the solid waste agency of Northern Cook County in the not-to-exceed amount of $705,000 for operations and maintenance and transfer fees. Funding will be provided by the Solid Waste Fund, which has a budget of $733,125 for fiscal year 2020. Is for action.
Okay, second, Alderman Braithwaite, and then Alderman Fleming.
Just a quick question. When I was reading this in the memo, it's on the last page, David states that, so we'll pay a total of $697,000, but it says subject to an audit that it may increase or decrease pending the audit. And I don't know, I'm assuming that it's probably a small margin, but help me to understand the variance in that number.
Sure. Actually, their fiscal year is different than ours, and I forget the exact month that it ends, but they will then total the total amount of tons of debris collected, how much Evanston brought, and actually know their budget. And then they do a true-up cost.
Okay.
And that potentially can increase our costs if we deliver more than what we were thought we would. And this year, we got a decrease, actually.
Okay.
The true-up was a negative value. So we always budget a little bit more than what we can calculate, just in case the true-up does go higher.
Okay, so 697 is an over budget, and then what was the decrease? Did I miss that?
I don't think it was in here. Our current year, we're receiving 3 payments of, I think, $52,000. They're deducting that from our
Okay,
costs.
so that's how it's, okay.
This is probably the first year we've ever, I don't remember.
We have been getting credits for the past 2 years, I believe.
Really?
Because we are taking less tons out there than what we had in the past. Plus, our operating cost came down lower as well.
So we want to acknowledge all of our wonderful environmentalists that
Yes.
continue to push educating us, and I can't remember. the name of it,
Recycling and,
recycling and all that other good stuff, yeah.
The food pickup.
All right,
Alderman Fleming?
thank you.
I have a similar question regarding the credit that we're going to receive this year, based on last year's audit. So when we factor in what citizens are paying for their trash, based on their cart size, how do we, or do we need to make adjustments since, I think it's for 3 months. Next year, we're going to pay a lower amount than I assume was estimated when we told the residents how much they're going to pay?
That savings will actually just help the solid waste fund. I think we're still $800,000 in the hole in the solid waste fund. So, no, we would not reduce the residents' charges. We would just try to balance up the solid waste fund.
All right, so every month, the solid waste fund will have an additional $19,000-ish.
About
in it.
$50,000 going into it. I believe that's what the number is.
Okay, all right, thanks.
So I know that the board of Swank is made up of, like, all the mayors and, then
City managers.
city managers. I want to know, do we ever see an accounting for those who pay into it? And I'm wondering, is everybody paid up? Or do they have any scofflaws among the communities?
That I don't know. I know we get the report showing what every community has to pay,
Has to pay, but
and
I'm
whether they're
wondering-
paying or not, I would have
That's-
to check.
that's what I want to know. Could we get a report on that, if there are any
Yes.
people who aren't keeping up? I'm thinking of one community in particular. Huh? No, but I'm suspecting one. I know one
Same one
that,
that owes us.
I know
money in
one that
water.
doesn't pay for water.
Water bill. I
Yeah,
figured where
and
you're
maybe
going
they
with
don't
that.
pay for garbage either, especially increases. You
Right,
know,
right.
you just, you know what, if you don't ask these questions, you sometimes don't find out the answers.
Fair enough.
So, anyway, all right, so we had a motion and a second on that one, so we're going to move right on. I'll take the next one. Approval, we're being asked to recommend to the council to authorize the city manager to execute a one-year contract extension for the purchase of granular materials with G&L Contractors in the amount of $28,200. The contract award is part of a bid let by Municipal Partnering Initiative. It's provided in two different funds, $14,000 each from the water and the sewer fund. This is for action. I move approval.
Second.
I'll take the next one. Is second, please? Oh, you have a second, okay. I'll take the next one also. We're being asked also to authorize the manager to execute a one-year contract extension for debris hauling with G&L Contractors in the amount of $80,000. This is also part of a bid let by Municipal Partnering Initiative. It is two separate funds also, $40,000 from the water fund and $40,000 from the sewer account. I move approval.
Second.
Okay, moving right along. Alderman Braithwaite, A9.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, I'd like to move item A9s for action, approval of the single source renewal of the 9/11 service agreement with Motorola. Staff's recommending Police Department, City Council, authorize city manager to approve the single source, and it's budgeted, it's in the dollar amount of $72,447.78.
Second.
All right. Alderman Fleming, A10.
A10 is contract award with Backflow Solutions Incorporated for the Backflow Prevention Management Program, RFP. Staff recommends council authorize city manager to execute a 2-year contract with 3 optional 1-year extensions at the city's discretion for Backflow Prevention Management Program with Backflow Solutions Incorporated and Alsip, Illinois, at the annual cost of approximately $44,770 per year. Funding comes from the Water Fund, which has a fiscal year 2020 budget of $160,000, all of which is still remaining. This is for action.
Second.
Okay. Alderman Suffredin.
I move item A11, which is a contract award with Barry Dunn McNeil, and actually, can we just remove this from consent agenda as well?
Yeah.
please?
Can we get a little presentation on this one also?
Now or later?
Is there one plan for later? Is Lawrence in the room?
He's right
I
there.
can't see past my. Oh,
Excuse me.
can we just, are you going to wait till the end of this meeting? I'd like to have a little presentation on this. I mean, this is off our consent agenda, but when we finish with this consent agenda, we're going to introduce this.
Sure.
Okay, so just wait.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. All right, Alderman Suffredin, can you do A12?
Sure. Item A12 is contract award with Open Studio Project for the art program at Robert Kahn Community Center. Staff recommends the city manager be authorized to execute an agreement with Open Studio Project for the City of Evanston Robert Kahn Community Center art program. The contract is 1 year with mutual option to renew for 2 additional 1-year options. The contract period will run from January 14th, 2020 through December 31st, 2020. Revenue from program registrations are deposited into the general fund account, Robert Crown, and instruction expenses are paid from a different account. Compensation for the vendor is based on a 70-30% split of resident rate revenues collected from program registrations. This is for action.
Okay.
Second.
Second, okay. Alderman Simmons, 13.
A13, staff recommends that City Council authorize the city manager to execute change order number 1 to the agreement with the Water System Vulnerability Assessment and Emergency Response Plan with ACOM for a time extension of 121 days, extending the contract completion date from November 1st, 2019 to February 29, 2020. There is no charge to the contract amount. Funding is provided by the Water Fund Studies Business Unit, which has an approved fiscal year 2020 budget of $250,000 and a year-to-date balance of $250,000. This is for action.
Second.
A14, we're being asked to authorize the city manager to execute change order number 1 to the agreement for the water plan evaluation study with CDM Smith, Inc. For an extension in contract time for 169 days from November 13, 2019 to April 30, 2020. There's no change in the contract amount. I move
Second.
approval.
Second.
Alderman Braithwaite, A15.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, I'd like to move for action item A15, change order number 3 with Greeley and Hanson LLC for engineering services on the Oakton Street water supply connection. Staff's recommending that city authorize the city manager to execute the change order number 3 agreement. It's in the dollar amount is $51,669. The increase is from $246,932 to $298,601. And then you also to extend the contract completion date by 150 days from January 28th. Is just a quick update for the public on why the increase. Packet.
The engineer requested an increase in costs on this because of the length of time that the contractor will be out there working. We were kind of in a rush to get this request for proposal out. Staff was, because to meet the timeline that Lincolnwood wanted to be able to receive water. So we put dates into the request for proposal just to get a price for the service. Now that the actual contract duration is known, the actual engineering costs can be calculated. So
Thank you.
That's what this request is for.
So to put numbers on it, we put in the contract 60 days, and the contractor was actually on site 130 days.
Right.
So it,
We'll be on site on
yeah,
30
yeah,
days, yes.
right, we'll be on site. So that's really the bulk
For
of
all
the
the people that
cost.
drive up and down there.
Huh?
For all the people that drive up and down the street. Never mind.
That's a lot of money.
Yeah.
All right, so, any other questions on that one?
Thank you.
Somebody else? All right, Alderman Fleming,
A16. A16 is change order number 3 with Bodella LLC doing business as Central Rug and Carpet to the contract for the Fleetwood Jourdain interior renovation. Staff recommends change order number 3 in the amount of $8,419. It will increase the overall contract amount from $664,573 to $672,992. There's no time extension associated, and the funds will come from the general obligation bonds. This change order will exceed the project budget, but funding is available from saving and other projects awarded in 2019 for action.
Second.
Alderman Suffragan.
I move item A17, change order number 4 with Tyneman Construction Incorporated for Clearwell 9 replacement project construction. Staff recommends the City Council authorize City Manager to execute change order number 4 to the construction contract for the Clearwell 9 replacement project with Tyneman Construction, Inc. in the amount of $3,265.51. This will increase the total contract amount from the current contract price of $19,283,266.04 to $19,286,000. $286,531.55. There is no time extension associated with this change order. The city has a loan agreement in place with IEPA for funding from the state revolving fund in the amount of $20,556,256 for engineering and construction of this project. All eligible costs will be funded by the loan, repaid over 20 years at 1.84% interest. IEPA loan funding for this work is being routed through the Water Fund Capital Improvement. Further information is included in the packet. This is for action.
Okay. All right. A18, Alderman Simmons.
The Parks, Recreation, and Community Services Board recommends City Council adoption of Resolution 125R19, naming the portion of Lake Street between Asbury and Wesley with the honorary street naming sign, Thomas Brickman Way. 3 street signs are made for the honoree. The sign is installed at each end of the designated area of the block. Traffic Operations Material Fund, which has a fiscal year budget of $58,000 and a year-to-date balance of $58,000. This is for action.
Second. Okay. Resolution 1R20, authorizing the acceptance of the 2017 Urban Area Security Initiative Grant sub-award from Cook County. I think we have a presentation on this
Can we
one.
take this off the consent agenda? I have some questions, too.
Yeah, we're going to have a presentation, too. Okay, so we're going to, do you want to wait? Let's wait until we do the consent, and then you can do that, okay? All right. Okay, so moving right along. Resolution 2R20, authorizing adoption of the Cook County Multi-Jurisdictional Hazard Mitigation Plan. Staff is recommending that the City Council adopt Resolution 2R20, authorizing the Cook County Multi-Jurisdictional Hazard Mitigation Plan. I
Second.
move approval.
Second.
I'm glad we got that settled. A21, Alderman Braithwaite.
I want to hold that.
Okay, we're going to hold that. Okay. Alderman Braithwaite, A22,
So,
1805
right,
Church
I
Street.
know, I just wanted to say, because staff passed me a note on 821. So the item is held? so we're-
We're just, it's off the agenda.
I realize that, but I'm just, there's a person who sent me a note that wanted to
You're
say
going
something.
to hold that? You're going to hold that?
You have a
in-
note?
Huh?
There's a public comment on that.
Oh, there's a public comment? Well, it's being
Being
held.
held, that's
It's
what
being
I'm
held.
saying. So item A23,
Two.
is Resolution 7-R-20, issuance of the request for qualification proposals, RFQ for 1805 Church Street and 1708-1710 Darrow Avenue. Economic Development Committee and staff recommend City Council's approval for Resolution 7-R-20, directing the city manager to request, for qualification proposals for the sale and redevelopment of the city-owned property located at 1805 Church, 1708-1710 Darrow Avenue.
Second.
Second. Alderman Fleming.
I support this, but I just want to publicly applaud that this went very quickly. We're trying to get some affordable housing in a similar area in the South Evanston, and I just applaud that this is moving forward and we have a chance to get some affordable housing up.
Okay, all right. A23, Alderman Suffredin.
She asked, Alderman Rainey,
You have
asked to speak to.
you have someone who wanted to make a public comment.
Somebody raise their hand.
Yes, Tina Payton.
Tina Payton. Okay. What item are you speaking on, Tina?
Well, since I didn't speak on 821, I'll speak on the one that you just passed.
Oh, we didn't pass it. It's
or-
being held in.
All right, so I want to make a comment.
No, you want to speak on 822.
822, yes.
822.
Okay.
1805 Church Street.
Yes.
Go.
So, anyway, we were at Alderman Ruth Simmons' meeting. We were presented with the affordable housing building by the church. And it was to my understanding that when you all acquired the property, that we would have a discussion about what was going to happen with the property, more than one meeting. And it appeared that this was going to be the plan without further discussion from the community.
Do you have the packet?
I'm just saying what happened at Alderman Ruth Simmons' meeting.
Speak to it.
So, so I'm just saying that myself and others from the community that couldn't speak today would like to have further discussion about the property at Darrell and Church, and not just put stuff there. So at the meeting on Wednesday of last week, it was discussed that the church wanted to build a 4 to 6 story building on the property, and we would like to see something else besides housing. My comment at the meeting was, I asked how they would try to pay for, they said it would cost between $20 and $30 million. And then we're going to have a situation, if they try to get federal money, that there's no preference for Evanston residents in this building if you accept federal money, which has happened already on Dempster and Pittner. So I would like to ask that we have more discussion on the property in the community for Church and Darrell, and not just willy-nilly put things there. Thank you.
Thank you. So no willy-nilly. We had a community meeting. We took feedback, and we could share those notes. The church was in attendance at the meeting, and there was certainly interest in housing. We talk about housing all the time. We're criticized for the housing plan that we don't have, and here is a proposal, and that's all that it is at this point. It wasn't presented as it's going to be the plan. It was presented as a community partner that has come up with a thoughtful and viable plan that owns the property free and clear, that has a financial capability to do such a project, and has contacted the right talent to be responsive to our competitive process, which they will have to go through. So this request right here is just for an RFQ so that we can see what interest is out there, what qualifications are out there, what developments we might have at that lot. And that's a very competitive process. So that proposal was not in any way presented as this is what's going to happen. And his proposal was in response to community feedback that we had at a meeting that that you were at and others were at. And I appreciate the church coming up with a solution for a lot that provides an opportunity for us to have more affordable housing and workforce housing.
And if I could add, that church, well, had a great idea and a great proposal, is going to have to compete with everybody else who responds to the request for proposals / qualifications. And there are developers in this room right now who are probably going to respond. And if you can put together a team, Tina Payton, you and others can respond, and all the not-for-profit housing groups that we know are probably going to respond. Well, okay, but you know what I mean. I'm just pointing out that this is open to whoever has the qualifications to respond. I know. It's, well, nobody has a foot in the door, trust me. It's going to be an open process, and there's a proposal going out. There isn't even a proposal going out because we haven't even passed this, so.
And just as a correction, their proposal was 3 to 6, not 4. So they did show a 3-story option and a 6-story option. And we're very receptive to the feedback, but as Alderman Rainey has said, and I've said already, it's just introduction to a vision that they had, and the process hasn't even started yet.
Right. Okay, moving right along. Alderman Fleming, A23.
823 is Resolution 8-R-20, Construction Engineering Funding Agreement with IDOT and Christopher Burk Engineering for the Howard Street Corridor Improvement Project. Staff recommends adoption of this resolution to negotiate the construction engineering funding agreement for federal participation with IDOT, the Illinois Department of Transportation. Execution of this agreement will allow Evanston to use $500,000 in surface transportation program funding that is obligated by the City of Chicago for construction engineering. Also, staff recommends City Council authorize City Manager to execute a contract with Christopher Burk Engineering in the not-to-exceed amount of $999,992.89 to provide Phase 3 construction engineering services for Howard Street Corridor. Funding will be from the Capital Improvement Fund 2020 General Obligation Bonds in the amount of $499,992.89, and from the City of Chicago Federal Surface Transportation Program Grant Fund in the amount of $500,000, which is paid directly to IDOT. The fiscal year 2020 budget includes $400,000 for this contract, and the additional $100,000 will need to be budgeted in 2021 to fund the remainder. This is for action.
Second. Thank you. Alderman Sufferman.
I move item A24, Ordinance 9020, amending portions of the City Code following the enactment of the Illinois Cannabis Regulation and Tax Act. Staff recommends City Council adoption of Ordinance 9020, amending portions of the City Code following the enactment of the Illinois Cannabis Regulation and Tax Act. This is for introduction.
Second. Alderman Simmons.
A25, staff recommends City Council adoption of Ordinance 177-019, directing the city manager to offer the sale of vehicles and equipment owned by the city through public auction, through GovDeals, an online auction system utilized by government agencies, on or around Wednesday, January 15th, 2020. These vehicles have been determined to be surplus as a result of new vehicle replacements being placed into service, or vehicles that had to be taken out of service for safety reasons with the intentions of eventual replacement. The equipment, which is from the old Robert Crown Center, has been determined to be surplus since it will not be utilized in the new Robert Crown Center or in any facilities. The interim city manager recommends suspension of the rules for introduction and action at the January 13th, 2020 City Council meeting. This is for introduction and action.
Second. Alderman Fleming.
Yes, I have the same question I've had, and I'm sure you have an answer for me. I realize some of these seem like they're very heavy-duty pieces of equipment, but there is like a Dodge Magnum. Just where are we at with trying to get these pieces of equipment available?
Happy New Year, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Sean Cholik, Facilities and Fleet Manager. Working with legal, we determined that the city code dictates that we sale the surplus items in the best interest of the city to get maximum value. We felt that the best way to make these items readily available to staff members of the city and to city residents is to do it through an online auction, which would be a little more accessible to everybody. And so I think that, things like the Magnum, the Dodge Magnum, which quite frankly has some pretty bad transmission problems with it, but those things could be bid on by everybody through this online auction service instead of having people go out and actually go to the auction on site.
I have a question.
Yes.
Can you publicize this? Can you put a link on the city's webpage to where the online auction is so that everybody who has access to the internet can access the auction?
Yes, I think that's something that I can work with Patrick to do
Yeah.
so that it gets advertised to everybody.
Yeah. You want to buy something from Robert Crown? Keepsake?
Yep.
Like a Zamboni or something?
Well, thank you.
What kind, just for people who haven't seen this, what kind of things, just a few items that
Sure. So
are accessible to the average person?
we have a trailer that's available. It used to be a forest or a greenways trailer, just a flatbed trailer for moving equipment around. There's a forestry chipper in case anyone wants to chip up any kind of branches or things like that. Actually, there's 2 of those. There's an old generator that is no longer in service with the city, and
Does it work? I mean, if it doesn't work, don't put it.
no, it doesn't work unless somebody wants to, put some money into it.
Do you
or
let people
scrap
know
it.
that? You let people know that, right?
Well, we let them know the year, and we let them, give them a little description of the equipment, so.
Don't anybody bid on this generator.
From Robert Crown, there's a couple items. There's a safe, there's a couple of kilns that we're moving along, some tables, some benches, and a resurfacer for the ice. So anyone who wants to start up an ice rink, there's a used one available.
I don't know. I wouldn't get too excited about this auction.
So thank you very much for working through that. And that's part of the reason I asked, because
Sure.
we do these all the time and people probably aren't reading the packet and might not know they can buy a cafe bench
Right.
from the city of Evanston. So we want this to be successful, so we do need to advertise it. So thank you for working through and getting these things available. Hopefully, as we have more applicable items, people will purchase them and we can help our community. So
Absolutely.
thank
And
you.
I'll
And
touch
thank you,
base with
legal, for
Patrick.
making that happen.
Thank you.
But do publicize that it's going to be on, on
Yeah,
the-
I will definitely work with Patrick, and we'll make sure it gets
All right.
posted.
Thank you very much.
Thank
We're
you.
leaving this on the consent agenda, okay? All right. All right. If there wasn't a second to this, I'll second it. All right. And then we'll suspend the rules separately. Okay. All right. Alderman Suffredin, number 26. Oh, no, that's not on here. All right, so let's go to all right, we're going to, I'm going to move the entire consent agenda now. I so move. All right, we're going to take a roll call, right? Should we take a roll call or no? I don't know. All those in favor of the consent agenda say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, and now Mr. Stonebeck is going to tell me which items were taken off. A4. All right. Let's go back up to A4. Who took off A4? Alderman Fleming. Run us through A4, please. Approval of a contract with GovHR to perform executive search for the next city manager. I move approval. Any discussion?
I mean, I made my comments earlier.
Okay. Anybody else? Hearing none. All those in favor of supporting GovHR to perform the executive search, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
Okay, so it's 1, 2, 3 yes and 2 no. Okay. Next item that's off. A11. A11, contract award with Barry Dunn McNeil Parker LLC for the Parks, Recreation, and Community Services Department Strategic Plan. This is a big study that is not to exceed $127,377. I move approval.
Second.
All right. Mr. Hunway. Also, Alderman Suffredin, did you have some questions, or do you want to hear a presentation?
My question's about the funding source, but if you want to do the presentation first, go ahead.
Happy New Year, committee, and good to be back. Good to see everybody. Lawrence Hemingway, Director of Parks and Recreation and Community Services. The funding for the strategic plan, we have $50,000 that was identified from the Good Neighbor Fund, and the remaining of the funding was approved in our capital improvement budget, and it's coming from that line item.
Yeah, do we use bonded funds for studies regularly? And it seems to me that might be not a best practice, but does anybody who's been here longer, can you name times we've used bond proceeds for?
I mean, it was, we were advised as a department to request our funding through our capital improvement, and so
Okay.
I do believe, the department, the last time the department did a strategic plan was in 2001. That plan was also used and funded by capital improvement funds. There was an update done in 2011 by some Northwestern students to that existing plan. The strategies around, strategic plans are generally tied to capital improvements, and so it makes sense, and it's been a practice that we've used here in the past.
Thanks.
Okay. Alderman Fleming?
Did you have a presentation or just, no? You did not?
No.
Okay, that's fine. Okay, so here's, I guess because I had the bonding question as well, but I know that there is a parks scorecard.
Sure.
I'm always interested when we choose parks to work on, where they fall on the scorecard. Reading this material, I understand the purpose of strategic plan. I guess my overall concern as a city is that we have not updated our city strategic plan. So now, as you would try to go forward with the department strategic plan, I know we've, had many plans, and sometimes citizens come forward and say we don't stick to the plan. I personally would like us to spend the time and money on a strategic plan for our entire city. I know we're not there yet, but moving forward in this direction, I guess my thoughts are I would like us to spend more time on the park scorecard, because people use our parks and people expect our parks to be in good condition, and some are and some are not, and I love to have more of an update and emphasis on when those repairs are going to be made, as opposed to some of the things that, while viable, will come out of this strategic plan, are not necessarily the things that people are picking up the phone and calling me about. So I would love to have more emphasis and time spent on how and which parks we're going to repair, with some citizen input if needed, versus policy goals and objectives and other things like that for whatever this overall total is, $100,000.
Alderman Fleming, thanks. I don't disagree with you. So part of this process in going after a strategic plan, the scorecard gives you just a very limited amount of information. It tells us the current condition of the park equipment and park amenities that are there. The strategic plan will take that. What we didn't do when that was done, there was no citizen input. We have not gone back out to the community as a department to talk about our trends, the programmatic aspects in each of the existing parks with the existing equipment, what has changed since the last time that we have gone to the community. And part of this is, as I arrived 4 years ago, the plan was in place to proceed with a scorecard. I tried then to say we probably need to step back and take a more broader approach, do the condition report, which is what the scorecard is, but let's also take a larger perspective and talk to the community, get their input. Trends such as, I'll use the pickleball example, is probably, one of the hottest trends in the country. What are we doing to react to that? What I'm doing now is, or our department is, we're going to overlay pickleball lines on top of existing tennis courts. Where do I even need those tennis courts? And in some cases, maybe, or are there underutilized other court surfaces that are in existence that maybe a certain neighborhood or community, if we had talked to them, we would understand and have a better understanding about how to move forward from a programmatic perspective. And I think the strategic plan goes out to the community, gets the community input, and allows us to start to look at their current conditions in this scorecard. One thing that will happen is it'll get upgraded and updated with all the things that have happened, and so you'll get an updated version of that scorecard. But now you get to overlay the community's input as well as the programmatic input, as well as the rest that the plan will provide. So I'm hopeful, and I agree that the scorecard is important, but as our practice has been in the city, when we go out to do a park improvement, we have these existing meetings or community meetings with that particular group or neighborhood, and it doesn't look at the whole picture. Another example I'll give you, we are in a reactionary mode to respond to create a dog park, where, if you look at all the data that we currently have as a department, we can look at where dog park licenses were sold, and that, we've heat mapped that and GIS mapped it, and so we can look at which wards and neighborhoods. And so that data may tell me maybe this is maybe a better place to consider a dog park versus actually going out and having those public conversations. And we just haven't done any of that about a park strategy. And so that's really the goal and what we're trying to achieve here now.
Also, we need to look at the populations. They change, neighborhoods change, yeah. Alderman Braithwaite.
Pretty fun.
And one more thing. It's been 20 years.
Yeah,
We need to really do this.
yeah. And so I would agree with some of the comments I've heard, Director, from our peers. A quick question, how much was the park plan? I wrote down 80,000. The park
Scorecard.
Yes, sir.
Yes, $80,000.
80K.
That's correct.
And so I would argue that that's a real comprehensive plan that kind of gives us a roadmap in terms of prioritizing our parks to the future. And the reason I was supportive about it is because in a list of all of our priorities, parks is always like at the top of the list for every alderman. And I think that scorecard definitely gives us, if it doesn't answer all the questions, for me, it helps us to prioritize. Number one, I'm going to send a compliment, which is over the last couple of years, our Parks Department has been recognized nationally for our overall programming. I think last year you brought home the gold.
Well, no.
You and the staff. Somebody did.
We finished second 2 years in a row.
Second.
Correct.
Out of however
Hundreds.
many people. Thank
Correct.
you. Again, a compliment. The other thing is 2 years ago, we went through a very aggressive process with our community in prioritizing all of our programs through a priority-based budgeting, where it was clear to the community out of the programs that you administer from your department which ones stand out. So I can understand the argument that you're making, but I'm also looking at 127,000 spend with the concern of the bond for it. And my challenge is, we have a Parks and Recs board that I know focus on some areas of the program, but I think we have a pretty good diverse board. And my question is, can we utilize them in a way that helps you to collect some of the information that you are pointing out in this memo?
Can I utilize the Parks and Rec Board? I mean, again, a volunteer board that, is appointed by this body or appointed by the mayor and approved by this body, who we take all our suggestions and ideas to. So the process of creating a strategic plan, as a Parks and Rec professional, I would, I don't have any of those professionals that make up that board. I have community members. I'm not sure of their skill set to lead the community in a very strategic fashion in terms of achieving a ultimate strategic plan, sir. And so that's just my honest opinion. I mean, they absolutely have there's a 9-member board. They all bring their different perspectives and experiences to the board. Mm-hmm. They represent all areas of the community. But if their skill set in terms of taking the community feedback, they look to us as staff to implement and to get the things done. And so I'm not certain that they could lead that to get us to a final product.
No, but as we go out into the community during this effort, I mean, we can all work together. I mean, I don't see any reason why we can't be helpful along with them. I mean,
well, I think I wrote in the memo, Alderman Rainey, the consultant, any consultant that's hired, they're coming in, they obviously will sit with us as staff, but they also are sitting with you as the electeds. They are also then taking a strategy out to the community on how to conduct the community input process. They're also going to give some of the trends and things that are happening so that as we're starting to update our scorecard on here's the things that were done, but when we had a consultant go out and just say your swing is this condition, your walkway is this condition, and your slide is this condition, they may say, now we'll get the input about we don't need that type of activities because our community has changed. I'm not certain my Parks and Rec Board could do that, sir, And that's the purpose of why you hire an expert or a consultant to lead you.
See, I mean, I'm certainly not an expert in this area, but it seems to me that we've waited too long to do something like this. We wait so long, it just costs more. That's what I'm thinking.
And I like that, you know.
2 decades is a long time to take a look at this kind of thing.
Yeah, and one last comment. If we were actively funding our park system, we should, you know, at what's considered a national standard, we would be turning over the park system every 20 to 25 years, meaning new equipment, new improvements, et cetera. Our plan is from 2001. And, you know, so a scorecard, again, coming in the door, I ask that we not do that. But, you know, I tried to change then, and I've been fighting to move in the right direction ever since.
I think this is very exciting. No?
My concern would be the cost. We're under a lot of criticism for a lot of things. It would be different if we didn't have a line of sight on what's going on with our parks. It would be different if we didn't have a very comprehensive community engaged CIP process, and it would be different if you weren't number 2, you and your department and your staff and all the people that contribute all the wonderful work, if we weren't on number 2 in the country, you know what I mean? And if we weren't using bonds to pay for it. If we found a grant to support this, and I would be more supportive, but those are my areas of concern just based on what was outlined with what the final plan would include, and I'm just looking straight at the memo.
How many parks do we have?
77.
What is 127,000 divided by 77? I mean, a lot of parks.
There's no question.
The only last thing,
Selling some of those parks. Yeah.
Oh, you try that.
All right, that's a whole nother conversation for another day.
I mean, the only last thing I'll add that we plan to work, if this is approved, work with the consultant to do, sir, is another plan is our 2008 Lakefront Master Plan.
Yeah.
Look at what we're dealt with in 2008 compared to what we're dealing with today. Mm-hmm. And so, you know, we are purely in a reactionary mode, and I would love to try to get the department in a position to start to proactively approach things versus being reactionary. I think a plan, once done the right way, comes back to this body for approval. That's the way you run your department.
I'm going to argue that I think this community deserves to have this money spent on planning for their parks. Nothing, we've all said, nothing is more important to this community than their parks. We've just spent a bundle on Robert Crown. Now, not everybody utilizes everything in Robert Crown. Lots and lots of people the community, you know, our parks are seen by everybody. They're right out there. And when they start to deteriorate or they don't serve the public that surrounds them, they're useless. Let's take a look at, and we're not talking about changing out one swing or adding a new bush or a new tree. We're talking about the big picture of our parks going forward for probably the next 2 decades. And that's what we need to look at. We just went into a new decade. It's 2020. Mm-hmm. I think we need to suck it up and go forward with this. And I think we're going to be amazed at what we find, and we'll be proud of the work that we'll do. Alderman Simmons.
To that point, like, you know, congratulations on the award, but from what I've observed at National League of Cities and other places, we aren't on the cutting edge of parks. Our park equipment is dated, and even the use of it could be refreshed, and that's no insult to our parks, but I think we could use some attention. We have the opportunity to do better. So I know that it costs money to do these things. Based on the amount of parks that we have, the cost doesn't seem unreasonable, and I would like for us, as we have families that utilize our park and want to do more, we have, we have an opportunity for more accessibility in our parks, and to serve multi-generations of families. That's some of the feedback that I received at our ward meeting, that our parks are not serving the entire family. It's something that we should be paying more attention to.
Here's one last shot. It costs nothing for our families to use our parks. You don't have to pay a one thin dime to go to our parks. And people have lots of fun at our parks. So let's give everybody the opportunity to enjoy our parks in the best form we can possibly provide them with. So it doesn't cost a penny to use a park. Know that?
That's where my property taxes goes to.
Well, you know,
Just say it.
thank you.
Yeah.
We all
yeah.
appreciate your property taxes. That's what
Oh,
we,
that's a
we
collective.
get police, we get fire, we get health, we get protection of all kinds, we get parks, we get recreation with our property tax. That's why we live here. You know, we don't live here for bad parks. We live here for good parks. So, all right. So we have a motion and a second. I'm going to call for a vote. All those in favor of supporting this very forward-looking consulting project, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
All right, I'm going to call the roll. Alderman Braithwaite?
No.
Alderman Rainey? Aye. Alderman Simmons?
Aye.
Alderman Sufferton?
No.
Alderman Fleming? No. Okay. All right. What's the next? 19, number 19. Is, let's see, that has to do with wait, I just lost it. The drones. Yes, Resolution 1, R20, authorizing the acceptance of the 2017 Urban Area Security Initiative Grant subaward from Cook County. This has to do with unmanned aerial vehicle program. Thank you. Chief
Madam-
Cook and Chief Scott.
Yes, ma'am. Madam Chair, members of the committee, good evening. Fire Chief Scott.
Good afternoon, everyone. Happy New Year.
Same
Happy
to
New
you.
Year.
Thank you. Chief Cook and I are very pleased to announce that we have received a portion of a Cook County Urban Area Security Initiative Grant, or UASI grant, for the express purpose of developing a unmanned aerial vehicle program for the Evanston Fire and Police Departments, sometimes commonly called a UAV or a drone. Let's see if we can work this. Oh, sorry. The goal of the program is develop a comprehensive UA program in which it will align with the mission and goals of the Evanston Fire and Police Department. In effect, to help us more effectively protect life, property, and the environment, and do it in a very safe, responsible, and transparent manner. Excuse me. Across the nation, UAV programs in the public safety sector are more prevalent than ever. The reason for that is that UAVs are now found to be very, very reliable, affordable, effective, and safe. And we have over 900 agencies in the United States that use UAVs for public safety, and over 39 in the state of Illinois alone. We think the reason for this rise in the use of UAVs in public safety, again, is because they're very safe and reliable. And so law enforcement and the fire service have really developed some proven and innovative ways to use UAVs in the public space. For example, I think one of the most prominent uses is going to be the ability for a UAV to enhance our ability to conduct large area searches and searches along the lakefront. So not only does the UAV have the ability to kind of increase our point of vantage and give us a great view for searches, but the technology of thermal imaging allows us to find victims that may be in the dark, obscured by smoke or even dense fog, for example. That same type of point of vantage and technology is going to be essential for us for increasing our operational awareness in large-scale incidences like large fires, building collapses, hazardous materials situations, or hostage barricade situations in the police department. As you can see in this example, this is some drone footage taken by a drone by the Glenview Fire Department. You'll notice on the left we have an apartment building fire in 2018 in Des Plaines. The drone was able to increase the operational awareness of the building collapse that occurred on the roof area because of the fire. And the picture on the right is the thermal imaging that showed hot spots within the building and a horizontal void space just below the roof that UAV was able to point out for us. The photo on the bottom is an actual thermal imaging snapshot from the type, make, and model of the drone that we would like to purchase for our agencies. When it comes to safe traffic flow, trying to prevent overcrowding, obviously that's a public safety concern for fire and police. So we feel that the UAV program would be essential in terms of traffic and crowd management. So not only would it be helpful in the pre-planning of those sites for an anticipated special event, but I think we could use the UAV to proactively help us discover issues or problems when it comes to traffic flow, pedestrian movement, or overcrowding at any special event. We also would like to use it for national disaster management. So whether it be flooding on the lakefront, flooding along the North Shore Canal, we think that a drone would provide us rapid situational awareness on an unfolding event, give us quick information with respect to infrastructure damage or utility damage, and even provide excellent imagery for us that we can share to the public so we can best communicate the sense of urgency or the types of situational awareness we want to convey to the public in a natural disaster type of situation. We'd also like to consider using the UAV for accident reconstruction, crime scene photography, post-fire investigation, and even pre-fire building plans for large structures like commercial buildings or high-rises. But for example, on this photo on the right, you can see for us to do a full investigation of that fire and survey that roof area would be very dangerous for firefighters, but through the use of the UAV, we actually could fly over that structure and safely survey that damage before we were to send any firefighters into that particular area for the investigation. We're going to be taking the concern of privacy very seriously with our program. So we're going to ensure that before the program is launched that we have comprehensive policies and procedures that are in line with federal, local, and state laws with respect to the use of UAVs in the public space. I'm sorry, Chief, go ahead.
Yes. Alderman Rainey, you're very familiar that when the Evanston Police Department embarked upon cameras in the community, that we thoroughly addressed many concerns about counterintelligence and the COINTELPRO style of policing that I'm thoroughly against. And since we've implemented the large array of cameras that we have within the city for public safety reasons, we have had no complaints about us inappropriately surveilling anyone in this town. And we thoroughly respect the law when it comes to the implementation of the drone program also.
Thank you, Chief Cook. So just to kind of really put emphasis on this, the equipment will not be used to conduct any random surveillance activities. It will not be used to target any person based upon any individual characteristics such as race or ethnicity. It will not be used to harass, intimidate, or discriminate against any particular group. Any data that would be contained would be properly stored. Again, this program will be fully transparent to the public. In terms of the training, we're going to use firefighters and police officers. They're going to go through a 2-day training program that will be fully compliant with the FAA Part 107 training and certification. And in terms of the cost, because of the Cook County UASC grant, it's really no cost to the city at all when we do this rollout in 2020. Our proposed schedule at this point is going to have the program fully implemented by the end of June of this year. And so we really see some huge and significant benefits for the use of UAV in the public safety sector, and we think that it is really the future for any progressive public safety agency to use this type of technology to help us be more effective, more efficient, and really, I think, increase the safety not only for first responders, but the public at large. So this concludes our presentation, and we'd be happy to take any questions that you may have.
Thank you very much. Very interesting. Yes, Alderman Suffolk.
So I see the obvious advantages for safety for your personnel, but can we talk more about how you're going to do the community education piece? I think one of the lessons we learned last year is that this is not a community that is open to government surveillance, and there's going to be concerns. How are we going to tailor the community outreach part to the particular concerns of Evanstonians?
So first, I think once the fire and police department develop their operating guidelines and procedures, those should be laid out clearly to the public so that they can see those things. Also, I think there should be clear delineation on how exactly we're going to use this and how we're not going to use that, and that should be clear within our policies and procedures and also effectively communicated. Also, we would like to go out in the public and demonstrate the technology. Actually go out there, invite participants from the community, whether it be at ward meetings, community events, to see the value of the technology and see it up close and personally.
Okay.
Chief Cook, you want to add anything?
Sure. Under the criminal law and procedure for 1963, under 725 ILCS 167, Freedom from Drone Surveillance Act, it pretty much outlines the restrictions that are placed on law enforcement with respect to counterintelligence, retention, when you look at section 10 and 15 in that section. So we'll be tailoring our rules and regulations in the police department based upon this law, pretty much as how we did with body camera. The law was laid out how we use the body cameras. And also, you know, I'm not opposed to any of the video that we utilize being part of the human services, you know, as a checkpoint to show openness and transparency within the city.
Okay. 'Cause, I mean, I see the thermal imaging is obviously like a very powerful tool, like you said, at night. I just am concerned about how we're going to let our residents know that this is not something to be concerned about in a way that they will believe, particularly, you know, if this is something that's flying. Do you anticipate that it would be flying over like the 4th of July parade or Northwestern games? I mean, you know, when you talk about crowd management, I think that's something that has people will be concerned about. And I don't know how we'd have to do a very good job of making it clear that this drone is flying to make it easier for everyone to be safe.
We would not necessarily make that a practice of flying it over the stadium, but if we had a credible threat and that information trickles down to law enforcement and firefighter personnel from the federal government. So if we did receive credible information of a threat at any large-scale event, this would be a tool that will help us determine threat in a quick and expeditious manner. Now, this piece of equipment, as the chief stated, you know, it's excellent for traffic reconstruction, crime scene investigation where we have large fires, arson, things of that nature, helping expedite the search for missing and lost children, for search warrant applications, to look at drug houses that we have credible information from and secured a search warrant from a judge in order to look at this property, because when you read in the law, it'll tell you about the search warrant requirements. Disaster, that's great. Terrorism information, as I previously stated, as prescribed by the federal government. And then, you know, we have some things like pedestrian, train accidents that cover a large span, and this type of video, you know, those type of scenes would be greatly useful in our profession.
Okay, thanks.
Alderman Braithwaite.
I just wanted to say thank you to Chief Scott and also Chief Cook for whatever resources and time went into securing this resource. I I think we're in a different age, right? We're in the age of technology, and we're also in the age of real threats. And so we don't have the luxury anymore to take these things lightly. This past Sunday, my church voted to spend $1,300 on a security system because of what's going on in the national media. So you look at any home with the invention of the Ring, we have drones that are on the commercial market that are flying around all over. I don't understand if we're not paying for it, and I don't know if, and I want to be clear, Alderman Sullivan, because I don't hear you saying no to it, but I just want to be clear that I'm saying yes, and thank you very much for bringing this to our city council.
Alderman Simmons.
Thank you. Like Alderman Braithwaite, I want to be clear that I'm in support of this, and any tool that we can bring in our city to potentially save a life is one that I embrace. Curious, have we borrowed it from, I know how you guys use resources from other cities. Have we had to ask for the support of another city ever to use their drone yet?
Not yet. That Glenview Fire Department has offered to let us use their UAV, but no, we haven't had the need at this point because we want it's something you really want to get into in terms of the fire department on an incident within the first 15, 20 minutes.
Right.
And so this is why we want it to be more readily available.
And then I haven't been paying attention to drones that much. Do we have to change any policy, or is this a municipal use where we don't have to do anything? As soon as we get it, we can start using it, or is there?
We have to get the requisite training and get the certificate of authorization. At that point, we'd be okay.
Awesome. Thank you for your work on this.
Thank you. And to Alderman Suffern's point, I agree with you, and this is something we very much want to do in collaboration with the council and with the community all the way along. So I think some of those concerns I want to address and be proactive with. I know you and I talked about drones a few years ago, and I wanted to wait on the technology to improve. And also, they have the public a little bit more comfortable with the technology, and I think they are because, one, I think they're seeing the effectiveness, and two, there's better legislative safeguards in place now than there used to be, as Chief Cook mentioned, that we're going to follow very, very diligently.
Right. And my concern is this, Chief Cook, for example, when you said that, it would only go in the air if there was a credible threat, if a lot of people are at an event and see the drone in the air and don't know why, that could create concern. I want to make sure that we have procedures in place, maybe to notify people, due to the large amount of crowds in this area, the drone is in the air, trying to figure out traffic or whatever it is. Because it's not really about what the 9 of us up here say today. It's about what happens when this thing is in the community moving around and people have concerns about it, whether they're fact-based, emotional, whatever, they're real. And I want to make sure that this tool is used appropriately and increases safety and people's feelings of security in the community.
Yes,
Alderman
sir.
Fleming.
I guess my question for tonight, because it's getting late, is so if we approve this, excuse me, you still need to make policies and procedures and stuff and come back to us. Because I obviously want people to be safe very much. So I'm looking at the state law right now, and I have some questions about that don't want to take up the time to, go through right now. But there are some things that I just need to have more clarity on for my own comfort level, and also explaining it then to my residents. Things like FOIA and so, recording that talks about recording and how long that recording is available and so on and so forth. So I'm happy to move it, forward, but I think before it is up in the air, I have many more questions and depending on the answers and, I might be to the point then that I'm not still confident enough to move forward, but for tonight, I'll move it forward so you all can get started on the work you need to do, but maybe I'll just schedule a time to talk with you about the concerns I have even in the state law and how we're going to apply them here.
Well, we tend to follow the state law, just like we did with the body camera. We have no choice with that, but we can interpret. We have a legal department that may have to interpret some of the legal language.
Right, no, I want us to follow the state law, but some of it I still have questions about.
Sure.
So we can do that offline.
Sure.
I think you have a whole bunch of laws to follow, including federal laws, state laws, local laws. So I'm not worried about you following the laws. Do you have another question? Because I'm getting a lot of feedback from higher ups. Yeah, yeah. All right, so thank you very much. Excellent presentation. So all those, I know that, all those in favor of supporting, let's see, I've lost the whole thing now. Let's see, it's number 19, A19. I'm going to call it the right thing. A19. A resolution authorizing the acceptance of the 2017 Urban Area Security Initiative. Say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none. This passes. Is that the last one? Oh, yes. Now we have Amazon credit card. Alderman Simmons, you want to take that one?
Yes.
It's like,
A2, staff recommends approval of the City of Evanston's BMO Harris Amazon credit card activity for the period ending November 26, 2019, in the amount of $13,190.11. This is for action.
okay. Second. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
I abstain.
One abstention. One abstention. The last item we have is a discussion item having to do with eliminating the 4 inches of snow falling that would generate a citation. We're being asked to hold that till our next meeting, but I see Johanna Leonard is right here, so go.
Okay, good evening, Johanna Leonard, Community Development Director.
And also Edgar Cano, who is in charge of everything having to do with snow and weather.
All right, so there's 4 things we're going to cover tonight. As Alderman Rainey pointed out, it's largely the 4 inches of accumulation on the ground issue. Before Edgar tells us about the weather that we continue to get.
Now, hold on a second. There's a lot of chattering here, and it's really interfering with us hearing. So if you could go outside if you want to talk, that would be great.
And so in addition to the changes with the measurement of the snow for enforcement, the other piece is we want to do some code cleanup with defining some things, and then also talk about how city operations are in terms of notification. So.
All right. Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the committee. I'm Edgar Cano, Public Services Bureau Chief, and I want to speak real quickly on a quick overview, weather overview here in Evanston, some of the things that we see that are changing and how our operations have to change along with them. So one of the things we're noticing are actually longer storms, making us go into multiple shifts, multiple days. Along with longer storms, we're also seeing earlier storms. Past 2 years, we've had significant snow in November. This past year, I'm sure we all remember Halloween. Another thing that we see happening is colder weather. Last year, polar vortex, we had to get some staff to come in here to make sure they were on patrol. And then another thing that we're seeing is more ice storms. And then that also, we believe, is because of just the warmer weather. And we do think that actually climate change and the impact that it has on the jet stream is the cause for all these items. The warmer weather is actually making the jet stream weaker. That when it makes it weaker, it tends to get wavy. When it's wavy, the polar vortex is able to dip low for us to get those cold temperatures. And it also, the tropical air is able to get a little bit higher for us to get warm and get those ice events rather than getting snow. And you can ask any snow fighter out there, we'd rather battle 10 inches of snow than a 10th inch of ice. So what does that mean for us? Costly events. With longer events, that means more hours that our staff has to put in out on the road and more materials used. Along with that, that takes a toll on the staff and on the equipment. The longer events can also lead to more snowfall just because there's more hours of precipitation. I know the East Coast especially is getting hit harder with slower events and bigger blizzards. The other thing we battle are cold temperatures. When we have cold temperatures, we need to have staff in order to monitor things, main breaks and other things like that. And it's harder to fight snow. The lower the temperature goes, the less salt works, we have to put in other de-icing agents to be able to get it down to those sub-zero temperatures, and that of course costs money as well. And you also have more equipment breakdowns too. Because of that, hydraulic lines break, pumps freeze, things like that. And along with the ice storms, you know, you need more staff out there to cover areas when there's ice. During snow, you're not so rushed, and the snow actually helps fight it a little bit because you produce more brine. With the ice, you're not able to produce the brine. You have to have more staff out covering all areas at once. And it becomes harder to produce brine, and it's harder to fight the storm. And then you get other residual effects of that, such as problems with power lines, tree limbs. That all adds to the cost of the storm. So real quickly, just want to go over last year's snow figures. So last year, last season, 2018-2019 season, Evanston saw a total of 63 winter precipitation events. Those events ranged from a simple trace of snow to about 9.7 inches of snow was our largest event. We had a total of 42 inches of snow and 0.67 inches of ice. As you can see here, January and February are usually our snowiest months. So for this year, these figures, the January one doesn't include the last storm that we just had this weekend. That was an additional 1.6 inches, making the total for January 2.1 and the total for the season 10.3. And just so you know, the average for January is typically about 10.8 inches of snow, and the average for a season here in Chicago is 36 inches, and they are predicting 41 for us this year. And that's all I have. I'll pass it back over to Joanna.
Okay, so we get a lot of snow, and unfortunately, our code, currently says there has to be 4 inches on the ground, whether from one snowfall or massive ice accumulation or multiple snowfalls that have generated that 4 inches. So this morning, we had 6 complaints, but not all of our responses of snow that had not been removed from sidewalks was, this is not a code violation yet. So there's nothing we can do other than we could go put a door hanger or try to contact somebody, but we can't do anything from an enforcement. So this is this was in the memo. This is just illustrating that we more or less get the same number of complaints when there's 9 inches of snow as there is on 2 inches of snow. And most people don't necessarily go and measure how much snow is in their backyard or in their front yard. It's just, it's if a sidewalk is not passable, it's not passable. So first one item we wanted to go back and change in the code is to remove the 4-inch requirement. It was added in 2013. This 4-inch requirement for enforcement really doesn't help us. It creates more of a challenge, and adjacent communities have a requirement that things be removed within. Chicago has this very aggressive 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. snowfall removed by 10 p.m., but other communities that are similar to us nearby have a remove all the snow or ice accumulation within 24 hours rule. If you go to communities like Libertyville or Barrington, they have rules like, please be a neighbor and remove your snow, but they don't have a requirement in the code. And I think our requirement of 4 inches is matching more of a suburban and not one that reflects a multimodal use of our community. Second item is, I think this is a pretty non-controversial one, is separately define snow and ice, because we have learned as of this weekend we can get ice after we get flooding. So those things in rain and other events that may not necessarily be tied directly to a snow event within a set period of time. This is the big one I think we want. After 4 inches, we wanted a lot of feedback on this one, is changing our enforcement policy. Right now, we go out after a snowfall and we get a complaint, because a lot of our responses are complaint-based. Property maintenance staff hangs one of these door hangers on the door, and it says, do the neighborly thing, shovel your sidewalk. And so I have Angelique Schnur from the property standards team, and she can tell you that she probably knows which houses she's going to go hang these on every year, because it's the same people who don't do anything. So 24 hours after the snow falls, this goes on the door. for somebody who hasn't shoveled their walk, then 24 hours later, they go back, and at that point, a notice of violation can be issued. And then at 24 hours after that, we could write a ticket. So at that point, several days have gone by, and you're going to get a pretty challenging path if there's still snow and ice. And as Edgar mentioned, these storms are longer, there's colder temperatures involved sometimes, so we're really running out the clock on our ability to create a safe passageway. The other piece I want to note here is that we issued 0 tickets last year for complaints. So I don't want to imagine how much time was spent hanging these out, but the number of complaints probably didn't match the amount of time that was spent. Other communities do download a door hanger or they distribute door hangers to community centers, alderman's office, so that people can go out and the residents can put these door hangers on their neighbors' doors. So that's a suggestion that we would consider. Additional code cleanup would be crosswalk cleanup. People who live on a corner have to remove the snow all the way to the street, so you don't have those little crusted mounds left over from the plows to get through, and hope that we can get across the sidewalk. Increase of the fines. Right now, we sometimes collect for sidewalks that haven't been cleared for multiple days. Sometimes we don't, but I think we're prepared and hopeful to be a little bit more aggressive for people who are not clearing their sidewalks or making any attempt to create a clear pathway. The other item that we would like to do is if you are getting a sidewalk cafe in downtown Evanston, or anywhere rather, if you are found to be liable for not having cleared your sidewalk, that you don't get an opportunity to have a sidewalk cafe in the next season, because if you're not going to maintain the sidewalk, maybe you shouldn't be able to obtain profit from it the following season.
Alderman Braithwaite has a question. No? Oh, okay.
Over there. Basically, the rules that we currently have in place are more suburban in nature. We are looking to make Evanston the most livable community, where we want to make a more walkable community. We often reduce the parking requirements for projects because we are told that people will walk and use transit and find other modes of transportation, but not having clear sidewalks doesn't support that. And one big piece of all this is the isolation that's created when people can't use their sidewalks. Older adults, younger people who don't have access to a vehicle. Those are sidewalks that aren't passable, mean that people aren't using them and they're not getting out and about. The Center for Disease Control and AARP have made a big push to spend more time thinking about how older adults fall and the dangers around that. Injuries related to falls are the number one injury-related cause of death for people 65 and older. The fire department pulled the log of all the calls from the past year. There were almost 600 calls for falls. Now, not all those were related to snow and ice, but a significant number, I think 65%, were related for falls for people who are 65 and older. And of those, there's a pretty significant number that could be weather-related. So these are all the things that come together when we think about being the most livable community. That's it.
Okay, now?
Yeah.
Alderman Braithwaite?
I'll just be brief in an interest of time. So my ward is a little bit of everything. I got some residential, I got some businesses, I got some downtown. Thank you for bringing this. I saw you did a screenshot of or a picture of Dempster Dodge, which is always a complaint. If I had my preference in how you roll this out, I would target the business areas just to make sure they're doing, obviously because they're getting the most traffic. Secondly, any large building or condominium, particularly those that are managed by a company, should also be held accountable. Where I'm a little bit concerned, in my suggestion would be, if I get a phone call from someone who is concerned about a ticket, automatically in my mind is going to go to like what's going on in the house. Like, is it just the scenery there, whatever the case may be. So I would make those two the priority, and I think just a general warm and fuzzy encourage people to shovel their neighbors' property on the residential side, that we make a very clear effort to promote that. And I guess my silly warm heart thinks that you'll probably get compliance. You didn't break out the 214 violations, and I paid attention to that number, so I don't know how many of those are residential versus business in those other areas.
But we didn't give any tickets.
We didn't give
right?
any
Yeah,
tickets.
yeah, just, so I was just saying, so out of the 214, she knows where all they are,
The complaints we received today were for residential districts.
so that's 214 all residential.
So the ones from today for the weekend snowstorm were all in the residential. And primarily, we got a complaint about a block over by Northwestern where it's heavily traveled by students going to and from school. But that's all residential right there.
Yeah.
But you got complaints. You didn't give tickets, though.
I can't
Yeah.
give tickets
No,
when
right.
it's less than 4, yes,
Right,
just
right.
complaints.
I got 200 complaints today.
So if I'm not seeing any opposition, I think we would return with code changes to it.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yes. Oh, I'm sorry.
That's good, I just turned it on. I have one clarifying question. So that part about if you live on the corner, if someone lives on the corner and the corner, I mean, we all have kids who walk to school and the corner is not shoveled a lot of times because the plow comes around and we know the plow puts the snow up on the sidewalk. And would we be then ticketing the person on the corner? Because we would assume that everybody who lives on the corner understands that they need to, are we suggesting they shovel the corner, or is it like required in our city code that if you live on a corner, you shovel the corner?
It's not currently required. Our recommendation is that we put it in that it is required, and we clear up, there's not good language in the code that defines those types of properties. There's not language in our code that defines carriage walks and curb walks and some of those other things that help explain what your responsibility is. So our goal would be to first update the code, and second is to do some better outreach, particularly to the houses on the corner that would have to understand that that would be something that they would be.
And that one, I think, in my opinion, would be very hard because particularly if you live on the corner, the plows, and I understand the plows aren't doing all the curb cuts, but the plows come, they put all the snow up on the corner. If you work full-time and you come home, the snow could very well be starting to turn into ice depending on the temperature. And we definitely don't want people out there trying to, get the ice.
We have to bring this to an end. Mr. Cano is never again going to plow any snow to the curb, to the corner, to the, right?
I'll do my best.
Yes, thank you very much. We're going to call this meeting to an end now, but you know what we're talking about. I mean, it's really discouraging. You shovel and then can you bring us back some kind of
Code updates?
amendment to the code?
Be happy to.
Yeah. You have to shovel no matter what. That's what I'd like to see.
All right.
Say.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, could I have a motion to adjourn?
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor say aye, aye.
Aye.